In 81 BCE, a great debate opened in Chang'an. On one side, court officials in formal robes, men who controlled salt, iron, money, and grain. On the other, Confucian scholars chosen from across the realm, speaking for voices from the ground. They argued 2 full days before the regent. And the question might stop you for a second: should the state keep salt and iron in its own hands? Should it take a little more from ordinary pockets to pay for war, roads, and stable prices? Good evening. This is Bedside Book Voice. Dim the lamp a little. Set the phone farther away. Pull up the blanket. Tonight we're reading the Discourses on Salt and Iron, a public debate from 2,000 years ago about how a state spends money, earns money, and treats its people. You don't need names or clauses. Just close your eyes and listen. Fall asleep along the way? That's fine. Wake up remembering only salt and iron? The night still counts. One word tied to every stove's taste, one to the plow and the border blade, that's where state finance meets daily life. What you'll take away are a few questions you can turn over later. After an empire expands, where does money come from? Can a rich state and rich people happen at once? When an official says this is for your own good, and a scholar says this is hurting me, who has the stronger case? The debate never gave one answer. It laid out both sides clearly. Don't rush to pick a team. Flip through both ledgers first. You'll feel steadier. Let me cash in half the opening suspense now. The debate didn't abolish salt and iron overnight. But it did push Emperor Zhao's court toward relief and loosening. Scholars didn't win everything. Sang Hongyang didn't lose everything. What lasted, every later age arguing how much the state should control, looks back to those 2 days in Chang'an. We'll close the other half of that loop as we go. Let's go back to how it began. Under Emperor Wu, the North fought the Xiongnu for decades. Wars cost money, horses, grain, rewards, roads, garrison farms. Wu was ambitious too, opening the West, building palaces, grand rights. The treasury leaked like a bucket. He turned to men skilled at managing wealth. The most famous was Sang Hongyang. You might ask, didn't the early Han have the rule of Wen and Jing, full granaries and strong reserves? Why was Wu's court so tight? Well, Wen and Jing had rested the people and built a cushion. Wu spent that cushion on territory, prestige, and the pose of a unified empire. Wei Qing and Hua Xubing struck north. Zheng Qian opened the west. Each move was a long bet. Ask only, does this feel good right now, and someone will cry out later. Those voices gathered as the scholars at the Salt and Iron Conference. Sang Hongyang had kept accounts in Chang'an markets when young. He knew trade inside out. He rose to Grand Counselor and held the purse strings. His policies boiled down to state monopoly on salt and iron, Junshu transport, Pingzhuan price stabilization. Sounds abstract. In plain speech, everyone eats salt, everyone needs iron for tools and arms. The state took both trades back and sent profit to the treasury. Junshu meant officials buying goods locally and moving them in bulk, cutting middlemen markups. This wasn't invented from nothing. In the warring states, Huan Kuan spoke of letting the state hold mountains and seas, controlling mines and salt. Lord Shang's reforms stressed state control of key resources. Wu's Han pushed the idea to an extreme on a wartime budget. Listening to the Discourses is like hearing a 2,000-year thread. Should the state control production? Hit a bright moment in the Western Han. Pingzhuan meant buying in good harvests, selling in lean years, steadying prices, stopping hoarders. There was also a wine monopoly, profit to the treasury again. Wonder how fine state revenue can get? The Han answer ran to a bowl of salt, a plowshare, a cup of wine. Modern ears may hear overreach.
Remember, no modern tax system, no bond market, border on permanent alert.
Unfair to scold ancients with today's tools. Very fair to let their dilemma shine on our choices, where money comes from, where it goes, who carries the load never expired. From the court side, this wasn't grabbing profit from the people. It was managing finance for the state. Without salt and iron monopolies, where would Northern Army pay come from? Without Junshu and Pingjuan, border grain prices would swing wild.
Sang Hongyang shot back, "You scholars only talk benevolence, when the Xiongnu come, do you drive them off with moral essays?"
That counter is hard, and real.
Scholars wouldn't say drive them off with essays.
They'd say defense can be funded differently, alliances, garrison farming, better generals, thrift, without taking every salt bowl and iron plow. One side called monopoly the only revenue source, the other called it the most painful option. Truth often sits between, without salt and iron, finance tightens, with salt and iron, bad execution hurts people too.
But wars drag on. People tire. Money runs thin. In Wu's late years, household registers shrank, refugees grew, powerful families swallowed land, small farmers bore heavier loads. On his deathbed, Wu issued a self-reproach edict: he'd exhausted the realm with endless war. His 8-year-old son succeeded as Emperor Zhao.
Real power sat with Huo Guang, Grand General, Grand Marshal, Regent. Zhao's court had to clean up Wu's mess, cut spending, calm hearts, decide whether to keep salt and iron.
Huo Guang, in the histories, looked steady and practical.
He kept Wu's frontier gains while hearing a tired empire groan. Calling the conference was like a political hearing: let opposition speak in the hall, let defenders answer face to face, find a step between mood and reality. When big choices keep you up, the clever move isn't instant loyalty. Put both hardest arguments on the table first. So in Zhao's 6th year of Shi 181 BC, the court gathered in Chang'an. Officials led by Sang Hongyang as Grand Counselor stood for current policy. Worthy and literary scholars from the regions, young Confucians speaking for anger at harsh rule, stood against them.
Huo Guang chaired.
Later Huan Kuan shaped the debate into a book, the Discourses on Salt and Iron. The Book of Han gives a short record: commanderies chose worthy literary men, let them speak, debated changing salt, iron, and wine monopolies with senior officials. Picture the hall, 2 rows, Huo Guang between. Young scholars, sharp tongues, seasoned officials, quoting classics.
One side said the people's strength is spent.
The other said the border is not yet safe.
Histories note outcomes. The discourses show how they fought. That's literature's gift. Who picked the worthy literary scholars? Roughly, the commanderies recommended them, local gentry and folk opinion, not names from the emperor's sleeve.
They entered carrying home stories, local salt prices, iron prices, labor duty, exile.
Officials in Chang'an totaled the national ledger, scholars told county ledgers. When books don't match, debate begins. Imagine a real face behind every line about poor people. One thing must be clear: the discourses aren't a courtroom transcript. Huan Kuan, Eastern Han, rewrote the debate as dialogue.
Names and scenes have roots, but prose is polished, leaning Confucian toward the scholars.
Don't read verbatim minutes.
Read a real policy clash turned into drama by a later hand.
The form is unusual.
Not treatise, not annals, the master said, the counselor said, back and forth.
2 camps arguing while you sit in the middle.
Abstract fiscal policy turns concrete, officials defending monopoly, scholars attacking profits seized from the people, each hunting holes in the other's words.
At its best, lively as good drama. Think courtroom show with no judge's gavel, only the regent listening.
Open the book and you'll see, chancellor says, counselor says, literary man says, worthy man says, grandee says. Don't sort every voice at first. Counselor and grandee usually defend monopoly, literary and worthy usually demand reform. They ask the same question 3 times in 3 metaphors, turning in bed, same worry, new angle.
Repetition isn't noise. It's ancient debate rhythm, hammer the point from every side. Let's hear the court side first.
Sang Hongyang's camp boils down to 3 claims. First, Sultan iron monopoly serves enrich the state, strengthen the army, stable revenue for border defense, canals, disaster relief.
Second, Junshu and Pingzhuan check consolidation and stop speculators. When big merchants hoard, small folk can't afford salt or iron, state entry steadies price.
Third, frontier farming and walled garrisons need long investment, you can't rely on emergency taxes yearly.
Monopoly income is structural revenue, more predictable than repeated levies on farmers.
Picture a border clerk. He eats state grain, gets salt money and iron subsidies. Officials say, without monopoly, that chain snaps. Scholars say, instead of taxing the salt bowl, fight one less war, build one less fort. Same clerk, 2 stories, defense we must feed, or family crushed by policy. In history he was probably a little right and a little ruined on both sides.
They also give examples. Xiongnu threaten the north, without salt and iron profit, what do border troops eat and use?
End state monopolies and strongmen monopolize salt and iron, prices may not fall, profit fills private pockets, state lacks disaster funds.
Sounds familiar? Key industries must stay public, or big capital leaves ordinary people fewer choices.
Next comes the sharpest part, the scholars' counterattack. They don't deny guarding against the Xiongnu. The question isn't whether to defend, but how to raise money. Their ideal, light labor, low taxes, farmers resting. Revenue should grow from stable farming, growing population, social order, not scraping last profit from people already thin. They blame monopoly for layers of clerks, empty salaries, salt and iron that never got cheaper. One line runs roughly, seize profit from the people and the people scatter. When the people scatter, the state is in danger. Block every path to a living and people flee or rebel, however full the treasury, the state won't stand. Wu's late realm was exhausted because profit pooled above, poverty sank below, money to treasury and clerk pockets while fields went idle.
Not empty morality.
Social pain they had seen. Scholars love a contrast. Under Emperor Wan, calm realm, light burdens; under Wu, decades of strain-halved households, filled roads with refugees. Officials answer, even under when the Xiongnu harassed the border, they didn't reach Chang'an's gates. Wu pushed the threat farther.
That had a cost. Change the era, can the same speech apply?
As you listen, ask, when they praise a good age, whose sacrifice got left off the ledger?
Both sides fight over what counts as benevolence. Scholars say benevolence isn't slogans, full bellies, warm clothes, fewer beatings, lighter taxes. Officials say without defense and order, benevolence floats in air.
Listen closely, not good versus bad. 2 orderings of value: national security and fiscal stability first, or people's present burden and dignity first. Each side believes it serves the people. Another question sounds lofty but cuts deep: what wealth blesses a state? Treasury stacked with cash, or fields full of plows and markets full of laughter? Scholars often put rich people before rich state. Officials fear loosen grip, strongmen rise, Xiongnu sweep south, farmers lose peace to till.
Not textbook economics. 2 definitions of a good life colliding. Debate weighs merchant against farmer. Confucian tradition honors farming, restrains trade, merchants chase profit, lure people off the route. Sang Hongyang came from merchant stock and flipped the frame: trade moves goods, the state must allocate too. Issue isn't trade or no trade, who sets the rules? That touches market and regulation in Han vocabulary. Debate reaches the western regions. Court says opening the west needs garrisons and gifts, money from salt and iron.
Scholars say distant projects exhaust people, secure inside first.
Ancient version of do we fund the big project?
Neighbors arguing about landscaping spend long face and safety versus tonight's wallet and sleep.
Another thread is moral education. Scholars say simple customs cut theft, you needn't rely on harsh law and monopoly.
Officials say border isn't calm, strong men unchecked, no time for slow teaching, need money and troops.
Rules first, or put out the fire first?
Parents and team leads know that moment.
At state scale, the question is vastly bigger.
Luxury versus thrift, scholars attack spending monopoly profit on palaces, feasts, grand rights seizing from people, then taking again.
Officials say some spending maintains dignity and binds distant peoples. Quietly ask, when revenue rises, can spending be transparent? Relief for worst off first?
Still alive 2,000 years later. The discourses hold many concrete fights.
Iron, does state ironwork make good tools? Scholars say clerks chase quotas, not usable plows, farmers keep old metal.
Officials say private casting puts weapons in folk hands. Salt, border people climb mountains for official salt pricier than smuggled. Officials say smuggled salt is adulterated, official salt guarantees purity and tax. None settles with one word right or wrong, only who pays. A scene readers love, scholars accuse clerks of chasing profit, forgetting righteousness, officials accuse scholars of empty talk, no plan. You almost laugh, then you can't change the subject and those lines still work. Ideal and utility never fully made peace. Sometimes debate jumps from how many coins for salt to what is the way of sage kings. Han intellectuals tied economy to values. Feels roundabout, yet that lift turns fiscal fight into how Chinese thought imagines the state. Can't hold sage kings as you drift off? Remember, they drag moral argument into every quarrel. The book also debates punishment, talent, teaching customs. Scholars attack harsh clerks, cruel law breeds fake obedience. Officials say without deterrence, strongmen merge land, bandits roam. Economic debate is never alone. How you collect money links to law and appointments. Salt and iron are the main line, rest are branches. If you lead a team or household, you may feel another layer. Sang Hongyang, hoard reserves, face big risk. Worthy scholars, stabilize daily life, don't suffocate below. Both camps exist in one home, one office. Huo Guang sharing was wisdom, don't quietly slash policy, don't ram anger, lay clash open, let both speak, choose in the middle. A note on Zhao's mood, Wu's machine still ran, but rest and recover was the slogan. The conference collided institutional inertia with popular pushback. Live through headquarters tightens while floor asks to breathe? Huo Guang managed the national version. After debate, Zhao's court adjusted, wine monopoly eased in part, salt and iron loosened, full abolition didn't come at once. History isn't black and white, debates rarely give total victory. They force decision makers to see the other side's cost. Sang Hongyang later fell in political struggle, executed another story. The discourses left the clash of ideas, not one man's win. After Zhao, monopoly broadly continued, details shifting. Wang Mang seized the throne, Eastern Han rose. Huan Kuan wrote a century later. Why? Questions never aged, how wide state control, will clerks fatten on monopoly, how balance border and home? Later ages quoted the book because it asked the whole question. About Huan Kuan. Eastern Han, around Emperor Zhang, steeped in Confucian classics. 60 chapters, basic discourses for the main fight, plus frontier, border, criminal law, ritual whiter than salt, still centered on state economic policy and people's lives. Pair with Guanzhong and the Guanzi and Sima Qian's fiscal narrative, Chinese debate over how far the state should reach goes back very far. 60 chapters look scary.
think 60 small debates.
Some salt, some iron, some junshu, and pingjuan.
Remember basic discourses tonight. Rest in the nightstand drawer. Huan Kuan split one game into 60 moves, good for listening lying down. If you've read the records or Book of Han, here's a map. Treatise on equalization in the records is narrative Sang Hongyang's rise, policy rollout. Food and money in the Book of Han is institutional.
Discourses are the live argument edition, same history, 3 angles.
Argument edition enters the head fastest. Add discourses as third puzzle piece after our records in Book of Han episodes. Sima Qian, what happened? Ban Gu, institutions in treatises. Huan Kuan, how people talked past each other. Library tradition shelves discourses with Guanzi and Book of Lord Shang.
Bridge from warring states reformed to Han scholar pushback.
Cross when you're ready. Let's gather key terms in bedside language.
Salt and iron monopoly, state sells and runs salt and iron, profit to public purse.
Junshu, officials coordinate transport, fewer handoffs.
Pingjuan, adjust grain between fat and lean years.
Worthy literary scholars, Confucians chosen into Chang'an to challenge policy. Huan Kuan wrote the debate into a book, sympathetic to scholars, didn't make Sang Hongyang cardboard villain.
Many misunderstand, discourses don't prove Confucians wholly right, legalists wholly wrong.
Han government was Confucian on surface, legalist in practice. Sang Hongyang carries Lord Shang and Guanzhong, scholars carry Confucius on enriching people. Gift is both shadows fighting in the open. Don't rush to a side.
Learn to hear officials count, scholars count hearts.
One reading I like, Sang Hongyang as chief financial officer, worthy scholars as user representatives, Huo Guang as boss who hasn't signed yet. Good policy talk forces each camp to say the ugliest true thing, then the decider cuts, knowing who bleeds. Today, without this the state can't build or stay safe, at this rate people can't spend or trust. Strategic industries in state hands versus let market breathe. Discourses won't pick your side.
They warn, shouting enrich the state while blind to folk pain, or shouting benevolence while blind to border and famine.
Good choices pick which pain you bear right now.
In business or team life, Sang Hongyang holds cash flow against uncertainty, scholars let the front line breathe. Different time horizons, 3 to 5 year reports versus this harvest and next year's wedding.
Hard call isn't A or B.
Which side hurts first, how long?
Listening in bed, no lecture notes.
One image, Chang'an Hall, 2 rows, lamps flickering, one voice says state cannot live without salt and iron, another says people cannot bear more stripping.
Image enough. Details wait. Classics ask you to remember one question overnight. Quiet like and subscribe to Bedside Book Voice like a lamp on the nightstand. No rush. Want the source? Don't start all 60 chapters.
Find basic discourses, then salt, iron, junshu, pingjuan chapters.
Stiff prose? Remember, question, answer, follow up, ping pong. 3 people, Sang Hongyang, Huo Guang, Huan Kuan. 3 words, salt and iron, junshu, pingjuan.
When scholars quote odes or documents, don't panic.
Both borrow the past for the present. Another listen, each round asks who pays. Every official benefit, who funds it? Every scholar ideal, who carries risk? 60 chapters stay orderly on one line, balance benefit and risk. Scholars open with in ancient times, sage kings didn't seize profit. Officials ask, were the Xiongnu there? Same map? Pull between should be and is miles apart. We still praise or blame with ideal or cruelty alone. Practice 2 rulers, should we, and can we?
Scholars pair virtue and profit, officials say without profit you can't build virtue, relief and garrisons need cash.
Money doesn't auto-equal virtue. Monopoly fattening only clerks keep scholar criticism fresh. Huo Guang mostly listens and judges. Histories match the staged version, wire between Wu's defense legacy and social exhaustion. Debate was pressure relief. Anger speaks, defenders state reasons, ruler chooses what loosens first. Like some hearings today, different form, similar logic. Virtue profit thread continues, moral slogans must answer where money comes from and goes, or debate pins you. Literarily, the Discourses opened dialogic political writing in China. Bedtime theater without sets, only ideas colliding. Real stakes behind them, farmer's salt bowl, plow, border soldier's grain, clerk's evaluation, emperor's frontier report, one national ledger. Turn volume down, Eastern Han looking back on Western Han. Huan Kuan's debate carries anger at eunuchs, in-laws, land swallowed. Meeting of 81 BCE retold in 1st century CE. Each generation retells under its own lamp. People quote Discourses lines, scholar attacks on seizing profit, profit exhausted above. Officials counter, without revenue, who feeds border, relieves famine? Don't quote one side only. Read whole dialogue, no referee declared winner, 2000 years kept writing same exam. Let's gather the thread. Surface, salt and iron. Underneath, how state and people split one cake, enriching state versus enriching people, crisis taking more, peace giving back. No slogan answer, two full arguments. Ask who pays, who gains. Last pillow question, answer yourself. More revenue for steadier state, or less burden for easier folk life? Greatness of the book, not one multiple choice item. A table adjusted again, prosperous years, border alarm, famine. No forever fix, only generations tuning. Sang Hongyang's end was ugly execution, but in the book he counts and talks back, scholars cry pain to a regent's face. Two courages, ask state for money, cry pain for people. One voice only would be dull. Still awake? Leave one comment line, Sang Hongyang's we had no choice, or scholars we can't bear more? No need to win a thought for the pillow. Subscribe, tap the bell. Next we might read the Guanzi and holding mountains and seas, planted long before this fight. Remember Chang'an's loud debate echoing in meeting rooms and kitchen tables, same fight, different clothes. Pull the blanket higher. Let voices sink. Huan Kuan wrote hoping later officials hear folk pain, later critics hear defense and fiscal difficulty. 2000 years on, we stand between those voices. One image enough, lamps in Chang'an Hall, 2 rows, silent Huo Guang between. Rest stays in the book. Before eyes close, let one phrase turn, profit seized from the people, or enriched state strengthen army, 2 ancient rulers. Measure tomorrow, book remains. This is Bedside Book Voice. Good night, see you in the pages.